All right, boys and girls, welcome back. Our guest tonight, like so many guests of this fine program, is here against his will. That's not funny. For my money, he's also the best damn investigative reporter in the business. After a long 6-year drought, making his triumphant return to Wicked Late, here he is, the one, the only, Jim Hummel. Jim, how are you, sir?
Has it been 6 years?
It's been 6 long years.
And you're still doing the show.
I know. What is happening in my life? That's why you're here to save the damn show like you did 6 years ago.
Are you still living in your parents' basement? Have you moved out yet?
I'm not living with both of them.
Okay,
so,
a little back and forth here. Hey, I can't believe it's been 6 years.
It has been a while, and I want to thank you very much for returning.
Oh, love to, well, just a quick ride down the road, East Bay guys.
And I'm not sure, we may have a photo of that fateful day way back in 2005. We may, look at those 2 young guys right there. Nice. Yeah, look at those young guys.
We look just the same, don't we?
We've barely aged at all, haven't we? Well, it's good to see you again.
Nice
and I have so many questions about what you've been up to. Talk to me, first of all, about the Hummel Report.
Well, I have, last time I was here, I was working for ABC6. I had spent a number of years at the Providence Journal. I had 13 years at ABC6. And 3 years ago, actually this month, we got new owners, change in management, and I just was not comfortable with the direction the station was going. So I decided to leave.
But isn't that always the thing in TV? There's constant ownership and all these changes and stuff, new people coming in, old people going out, and it's hard to have any kind of a rhythm in that business.
It is. Well, I was fortunate in that the 13 years I was at Channel 6, we had the same owners. Now, I had 5 news directors and 6 general managers,
right.
But you know what? I'm always a guy, I didn't want to be an anchor, I just want to go out and do news.
Right.
And they always need people to do news.
Sure.
The problem was the new owners came in, really didn't know what they were doing, thought what works in Cleveland will work in Cranston.
Right.
They hired an actress as an anchor, and it went downhill from there. And so, in all seriousness, in this business, your integrity is your most important thing.
Sure.
And they were beginning to push the envelope, I felt, in a bad direction. Mm-hmm. And so my wife actually said, you know what, you got to get out of there. So I thought, I got a 3-month non-compete clause. I'll go on what I termed as a sabbatical, which she took issue with. Well, that sabbatical turned into a 14-month hiatus, because we all know what happened in the fall of 2008 with the economy.
That's right.
So,
we don't have time to get into it in depth, but I think people know what you're speaking of.
I could have been Edward R. Murrow himself and not gotten a job. Let's just put it that way.
So now the Hummel Report gives you more flexibility than you had with ABC6. You can kind of do you investigate the stories you want to investigate, and then you can put the time that you want to put into it?
Exactly. And so the downside is I'm now a small businessman that Frank Capri and all those guys wanted to hug during the election last year. I went out and formed my own 501c3. So we're a nonprofit venture, but I partner with WPRO Radio. So it makes it a little bit different.
Sure.
And for those who are not familiar, it's hummelreport.com. I put up a new video investigation, and that's what also distinguishes us. A lot of nonprofit journalism, they do written, but there's nothing like that ambush interview, like the you paid for it.
Right.
And so I post a 5 to 6 minute piece, which also makes it a little different than in television.
Sure.
And I do a smaller version on the radio, which pushes people to the website, and I also partner with Motif Magazine. And what's clear in this day and age, if you're going to survive in media, you've got to go across several different mediums.
Sure. Now, one of the trademarks of good reporting is that ambush-style interview, which I think you excel at. Do you get a charge out of that?
I like the ambush. Well, and my mantra, Brendan, is if you're not doing anything wrong, you got nothing to worry about.
Right.
So no wonder the cockroaches scatter when we walk in sometimes.
Now, if someone has like a tip for you or something, and they have a story they want you to investigate, can they get in touch with you at Hummel Report?
Oh yeah, and that's where most of, honestly, I've been in this market almost 30 years, and I actually interned for the Providence Journal 30 years ago this summer.
Goodness.
So I've been around a long time, and I have a staple of people who contact me, but most of the tips are really from people watching. They hear me on the radio, they see me here, and if you go to hummelreport.com, we have an email, we actually call it the drop a dime line.
Very nice.
And you have to be old enough to remember what a phone booth was when you actually dropped a dime. My kids are like, what does that mean, drop a dime?
I love, whenever I'm driving around and I see a phone booth, there's so few, I always take a picture, send it to my buddies, and we just,
Exactly.
a phone booth. No
What
one
is
uses
that?
a phone booth.
My daughter goes, when we were trying to decide, I have twins who were going into 9th grade, and when we were talking about cell phones a couple of years ago, my daughter said to my wife, when did you get your first cell phone? My wife goes, I was 35. And she was like, kids don't
One of my
realize.
favorite, when I'm going to buy a new cell phone, and they say, is there anything in particular you're looking for? I love to say, something in a rotary, just to get,
I'm sure they appreciate you.
Of course they do. Now, how do you determine whether or not the story that someone might tip you off regarding has any legs? I mean, because I would imagine some people think, oh, this is a big deal, I better contact Jim Hummel, but I would think that some stories might not have as much substance as others. Is it difficult for you to discern whether or not a story is worth pursuing or whether or not it's worth just kind of putting to the side?
Those are the decisions, Brendan, we go through every day and have either, whether it's with the Journal, with ABC6, or what I'm doing now. And let's say there are stories, when I went over to television, there were stories that were great print stories, but I also have to translate to video.
Right.
And so, one, that little element of the ambush, either sitting down and putting somebody on the spot, I can call it that, a controlled ambush,
right,
or jumping out from behind the tree.
Right.
It has to be, there are elements that I'm looking for, and some of it's just intuition.
Right.
I've been doing this long enough that I know, and in Rhode Island, there's some stories that really irk people. Some stories I do are worth millions of dollars. Others, it's the public employee sitting in his truck for 5 hours a day.
Yeah. I mean, so it's got to be a tough decision for you sometimes, I would think.
Well, you get 10 tips, and if one out of every 10 pan out, you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
The beauty of what I do now is that I have total editorial control over what I do. I also have to raise my own money.
Right.
But the flip side is, with that freedom, I only produce once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes once a week seems like a lot, sometimes a little. But at ABC6, you would always be doing investigations, and they say, hey, by the way, Hummel, the governor's having an emergency press conference. Can you break down your stakeout, and can you do a live shot for us at 6?
Sure.
I don't have to do that. I had my first snow day in 35 years.
Oh, my God. Now, you
Great.
said you partner with WPRO, which explains why you fill in a lot of times over
do.
in that fine station for
I do.
Dan York sometimes.
I fill
John
in for DePietro, York, whoever needs filling in for.
Do you like being on the radio?
Well, radio is great because it teaches you two things. One, if you can do live talk radio for 3 or 4 hours, you can do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, in television, they're telling you to shut up after a minute.
That's
it. You got to stretch it out.
Yeah.
But I really like the back and forth of the audience, and you can loosen up a little bit. And it also, I have a lot of institutional knowledge. Most people would call that geriatric age. But when you're
Ironically, a lot of people have told me I need to be institutionalized. So, we're kind of on the same page.
We're talking to the producers about that.
Yes.
The men in the straitjackets over there, off camera. Talk radio is great, and Rhode Island is just a hotbed for talk radio.
Yeah.
And I love going back and forth. It's amazing who will come out of the woodwork. Kids I grew up with, people who knew my father.
Right.
Some guy I covered 20 years ago will bring up a story, and that's fun. I like talk radio.
And you kind of revisit those people. Maybe they have something now that's in the news, and you can kind of revisit that, which must be really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, Jim, you being here is a big deal for us because so many guests won't return to the show.
Well, try to contain yourself.
So I know I'm very excited about this, and I want to know if you ever want to investigate something going on here. If I call you, would you do a Hummel Report investigation right here at Wicked Lake?
I don't think you really
Examining
want to be.
the mob?
I don't think anybody's ever asked to be investigated.
Well,
Usually they're like, they give me the Heisman when I walk in.
I think for comedic effect, you could investigate the monologue or something like that.
Well, I try to go after government entities, but I could make special exceptions because there is some money involved here that people are paying, for the surcharge, and there's some angle we could come in, right?
Yeah, you and I could get to the bottom of this.
Exactly.
After a hot meal.
I will tell you, I've never had anybody ask to be investigated, though. You kind of threw me on that
Jim,
one.
I like to think of myself as an original.
Well, that you are, Brendan.
Well, again, theHummelReport.com.
Yep, HummelReport.com.
Just Hummel Report.
Yep, Hummel Report, not the Hummel Report.
Okay.
And it's my sister-in-law. She's so funny.
Somebody's trademarked the Hummel Report already? Is that?
You know what? I haven't checked.
It was
Maybe we
unavailable.
should check it out. My sister-in-law goes, now I have a cousin who lives in Washington. Can she get this too? I said, it's World Wide Web. It's a technology thing.
The W doesn't stand for Washington Wide Web.
Exactly.
But it's included. Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, great to be here.
Seeing you again.
Hey, let's not make it another 6 years.
Right?
We might be dead.
That's it. Thank you so much, sir.
Great
The
to see
great
you, Brandon.
Jim Hummel, everybody. We'll be right back after this.